the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation, Mr. Biman, Commissioner of Police, Mr. Luciate Bravo, my good friend, President, Mr. Raju, the Director of PSH, Umesh Kumar, prominent citizens of Nadi, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Kula Milaka and good afternoon to you all. It's always a pleasure to be in Nadi and to speak to so many of you. As I know, in the past, I've had very positive feedback from you. I want to begin by thanking Dr. Raju, the Nandi Chamber of Commerce again, for the warm invitation and to assemble a very good list of distinguished speakers and people who have Fiji at heart. And I know you have the theme Fiji's economic review, next fiscal budget and beyond. I like the term fiscal budget. The government remains deeply committed to open dialogue and collaboration with all stakeholders, particularly the private sector, as we regard private sector, including NGOs, non-governmental organizations in other aspects, as key partners in national development. Over the past year, we have prioritized genuine and meaningful consultations. We started with the National Economic Summit, had extensive, probably one of the most consulted national development plan that we now have for Fiji, where we lay down very clearly where we want to go in the next 20 years, which is by 2050, and our ambition to become a high-income country. We have concluded just last month budget consultations across the central, western and northern divisions. Those sessions were very interactive, open, and we had many valuable ideas from a wide cross-section of our people. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, summits, panel discussions, debates, dialogue, national consultations, workshops are part of the ingredients of a genuine, open democracy. I have always said in my dialogue and articulations that the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience that resides in people like yourselves, usually outside of government, is very important for sound policy making and nation building efforts. And that is why all of us, right from the Honorable Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Ministers, and I know Deputy Prime Minister Gamoka does that on a regular basis. So today's theme of Fiji's economic review, next budget and beyond, aligns perfectly with our thinking and our approach to policy making and indeed the budget. We've been very candid and direct in setting clear expectations for ministries and agencies to implement funded projects without delay. Again, DPM Kuboka and I have raised these issues not only in cabinet but within our discussions about why our civil service, our people in government need to be agile, active, and do things. As Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi recently said, and I quote, Delay is the biggest enemy of development. And I agree with him completely. We must not allow bureaucracy or inertia to hold us back. And we are determined as a government to defeat that enemy, delay, that sometimes our people get frustrated. And I know I've had a lot of interactions with a lot of people. Natasha is there. We often talk about how things get delayed. Because when things get delayed, approvals get delayed, permits get delayed, money circulation that is very important to the economy doesn't happen. So let me just give you a brief overview of the economic performance for us. Over the past 2 years, macroeconomic fundamentals have significantly improved. And since we took office in 2023, the economy has demonstrated remarkable resilience, driven in large part by a very strong recovery in the tourism sector, but also other sectors have shown signs of progress growth. And the ripple effect of all that combined strategy to grow the economy has shown in our growth rates. I know DPM Kaboka is going to talk about tourism a little bit more. But let me just give you, in 2024, we achieved a historic milestone, 982,938 visitor arrivals, presenting a 5.7% increase over 2023, and 88,000 more than our pre-pandemic peak in 2019. Tourism earnings were up, hotel occupancy was strong, the average length of stay increased, clear signs that the sector is also growing. While we did observe a slight dip in visitor arrivals, down 5.3% in the first quarter of this year, I'm pleased to report, and DPM Kaboka again has said that publicly, we've seen a big turnaround. In the month of April, arrivals rose by 4% on the year-on-year basis, led by a strong rebound from our largest source market, Australia. And I'm confident that momentum will carry on throughout the rest of 2025. As I said, beyond tourism, we've seen strong performances in gold production, electricity generation, cement manufacturing, timber processing, and beverage production. Our GDP growth forecast initially for 2024 was revised from 2.8% to 3.8% in November last year. For 2025, we have initially projected growth of 3.4%. However, we are taking a very cautious approach. We are mindful of the changing global economic environment, and we are reviewing our forecast. But I strongly believe that we will still grow despite the uncertainties at a rate of more than 3%. Our financial system remains very stable, well capitalized, resilient. Commercial banks and financial institutions are continuing to support domestic activity with strong balance sheets, rising profitability, declining non-performing loans. As of March 2025, credit growth stood at 12.2%, which is quite significant, with interest rates relatively low at 4.51%. Liquidity remains at about 1.9 billion as of April. Domestic demand remains very strong, supported by good labor market conditions, higher remittances, rising household incomes. Early indicators in 2025, for example, show a very encouraging net debt collection of about 11.7%, while new consumer lending rose by 58.2% in the first quarter. New vehicle registrations have shown a strong growth of 31.3% in the first 2 months. I know some of you may not like that because of the traffic congestion. Inward remittances reached a record 1.3 billion in 2024, an increase of 6%, and the trend continues. By March 2025, inward remittances totaled 342.7 million, up 10.3% on a year-on-year basis compared to last year. We also saw a notable increase in outward remittances, which is another phenomenon, which rose by 19.2% to 139.6 billion over the same period. So our workers who come from overseas to work here also send remittances. Investment activity is picking up, and picking up pace at a very good rate. Lending by commercial banks for investment purposes rose by 12.2% in the first 3 months of this year, signaling growing business confidence and capital expansion. On the inflation front, there is positive news, contrary to the mischief that some of our opponents make about these figures. Inflation fell to negative 0.9% in April 2025, down from 7.1% a year ago, marking the lowest level since 2021. This decline was driven by lower prices in food and non-alcoholic beverages. It's a very clear indication. Transport, housing, utilities, and clothing categories. Meanwhile, our foreign exchange reserves remain strong at 3.5 billion, sufficient to cover about 5.6 months of imports. Our fiscal position is very strong, supported by better than expected tax collections, 140 million higher in the first 9 months of this fiscal year, from August 2024 to April 2025. And our revenue reforms that we did in the last 2 budgets are working, and we are firmly on the path of fiscal consolidation. We have successfully reduced the debt to GDP ratio from 90.7% when we came into government to 79.4% as per the last financial year. And by July 2025 this year, we expect this to fall further to 78%. This has been made possible by a robust recovery in the economy and our strong commitment to fiscal consolidation. As I said before in many other forums, we have to continue with some of those reforms. We cannot be completely derailed by a populist agenda, by criticisms of what government can do or what government can't do. We want to stay on the path of making the right decision for our country in terms of economic policy. Because if we don't do this now, the pain and suffering to our people will be much bigger and will be disastrous in the future. Let me just say a little bit about cost of living issue. I was in New Zealand the last 2 days. I had some discussion about what was going on in New Zealand. 4 consecutive quarters of negative growth, topics of inflation, health, waiting list. These are fundamental issues that many of our partner countries are facing. High cost of living is an issue that continues to burden some of our families. Rising global commodity prices, geopolitical tensions, supply chain disruptions, these have a direct impact on the price of essential goods and services. As a country that imports about 60% of its consumer goods. So even if the VAT is zero on 22 items, we're importing goods from Australia, New Zealand, US, where the prices go up, where the inflation rate is much higher, where the interest rate is much higher, where the freight cost is high. We can expect prices to go up. So some prices for food items that have zero VAT and very low duty have also gone up. In other cases, they have gone down. And the government has very clearly recognized this. And we have put in measures in the last two budgets to address those. And let me just highlight some of those because it is important for us as a government to do that. Some people tell us that we don't sell a lot of good things that we've done in 2 years and that we've allowed ourselves to pass through unnecessary criticism by those who choose to ignore the actual facts and statistics. So in the last two budgets, the first budget we added prescribed medicine to the 21 zero-rated bed items. We introduced back to school support, paid about $130 million each in 2023, 2024. Sorry, $130 million total in the last 3 years. Average of about $40 or $42 million. We paid the social pension, 15% increase for 65 to 70 years old, while 25% increase for those over 75 years. 15% increase in family assistance allowance across all the schemes in the country. Minimum wages gone up from $4 to $5, and I want to thank the business community for understanding the need because, as I said earlier, the consumption, the demand, the VAT revenue, and many businesses in the Western Division tell me that they are doing well, at least in the retail sector. That has allowed a lot more consumption and support for our people. We increased the salaries of civil service between the range of 8 to 20%. That's also helped consumption growth. Increased funding for transport allowance for students from 37 million to 60 million. Forgiven over $650 million in student debts. That was one of the most disastrous way in which that particular scheme was done, and we have replaced it. And that idea came from Deputy Prime Minister Kaboka during the campaign as part of his policy, his party's policy. And I'm glad this is the first time in the history of Fiji that we have a completely merit-based scholarship. Completely merit-based scholarship. And we're giving more students scholarships categorized into different sectors. So we are sending more people into technical and vocational education, providing them with full scholarships, managing them properly so that our workforce capacity is built in the future. Technical education was completely destroyed in this country. Disastrous technical colleges where $30 to $40 million went down the drain. We've replaced that with this very important scholarship. And again, there are people out there who are misinterpreting just because 70% of the scholarships received by Indo-K students doesn't mean that others were discriminated. Not a single student who applied, who had the mark, who had the merit, was given a scholarship. We provided a funding of $4 million in the 2024-2025 budget to reinstate the pension, payment for pensioners, the doctors for reduced pension in 2011. So we are also clearing some of the injustices that was done in the last 15, 16 years before we came in. We allocated $9.2 million in the last budget to end the Batutola strike, to bring justice to the workers there. And in this year, we are also going to provide additional funding to make the second part of the payment. Recently, we paid compensation to the ATS workers as well. We've made significant investments in agriculture, MSMEs and cooperative enterprises, promote domestic production and promote economic self-sufficiency. And we recognize that the private sector has a very critical role to play in the economy generally. We're also saying that businesses must embrace fair pricing, enhance operational efficiencies, and adopt sustainable models of profitability. We cannot continue to protect industries through high import duties or limited competition if they exploit this protection to set unreasonable prices. There are industries where this is happening and we know about it. And we are saying, please address this. In the upcoming budget, we will explore further measures to alleviate cost of living pressures, especially in categories where we feel that we need to provide more support. We ease the financial burden on some of those in the lower income category. The 32% tariff by the US. US is a very significant trading partner for Fiji, and approximately 10% of our trade is with the US. And beyond trade, US is a vital source market for Fiji's tourism. We have major remittance flow from the US to Fiji, approximately about 30%. And US has been a long-standing development partner for Fiji. Additionally, we maintained the trade surplus. In fact, we had a trade surplus of 63 million in 2024. And we believe that trade deficit should not be equated to import tariffs. Fiji's key exposed to the US market include mineral water, which is close to 10% for us. Others include kava, fish products, sugar confectionery, food and artifacts. We don't think that in the short to medium term will have a drastic impact on our exports. And the negotiations with the US is continuing. Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida has taken that on board, and we are hopeful that there will be an agreement between the US and Fiji, and that these issues will be behind us. However, if the global trade war continues, and if there is a global economic slowdown in our major partners, then by different transmission mechanisms, tourism, although tourism numbers don't suggest that we would have any issues. But in the long term, but the state of our economy at the moment has prepared us well. So if there is any impact, we will be very easily be able to absorb, and we will put some anticipatory measures in the next budget as well. On infrastructure development, we are providing additional funding, focusing very clearly on clean drinking water, upgrading road and drainage systems, enhancing healthcare facilities, ensuring affordable housing, and improving social infrastructure in communities that most need. So these are areas where we will continue to focus. Let me say this at the expense of repeating myself all the time, and I think this must be repeated. We inherited one of the most dilapidated state of health, education, infrastructure in this country. We've started with our development partners allocating funding, fixed a number of health centers, we're fixing the CWM hospital, we are negotiating new agreement for Biman and Lotoka hospitals, but we cannot do everything in 2 years. And some of the things that we have will not be finished in the next 2 years. That is the fact. That is the reality of what we face as a government. So we have built these issues in our long-term plan, 3-year, 5-year, and 20-year plan. We have reestablished the public works department to ensure that we handle some of the daily maintenance issues such as roads, drainage, improvements in the infrastructure. Vigilance Authority has taken a very decisive step to ensure that there is no demarcation between FRA and non-FRA roads, and that the needs, daily needs of our people in the rural areas are addressed. We brought back the drainage board, and there's a lot more efficiency and a lot more speed that we're seeing now in terms of the work done around the drainage area. Renewable energy, we are going a big way. There will be some announcements, some of the policies we already have. We feel that that will add to the national grid, that will add to the reduction in the power outage shortages that we see in different areas in the country. Apart from the number of concessions, subsidies, duty concessions, we will provide additional support in the next budget for our household capacity to engage and develop renewable sources of energy. The new Commissioner of Police is here today, and I'm sure he will be talking to you about public order and safety. I know Nadi and Latoka areas, then you can see the amount of work that Commissioner Bravo has already done, and the success that we are seeing not only in terms of addressing the drug issue, which is an issue that festered on for years and years. And it is this government that had the guts, that had the strategy, whether it's through the Narcotics Bureau, whether it's through increasing the budget, whether it's by rehabilitation centers that we are putting additional funding in there. We have taken this issue head on. And as the commissioners has been saying quite rightly, this is one thing that we need to address in this country urgently. And we provided some additional support for tax holidays, 13-year tax holiday for rehabilitation centers, drug rehabilitation centers. And I asked the private sector to look at supporting and investing in those areas as well. We focused very strongly on resource-based sectors. I'm sure DPM Koboka will talk about the Banwaletu Tourism Development Project. In fact, Banwaletu is moving. And my take on Banwaletu, because I am from there, quite a few from government who are from there, is that for the next 20 to 30 years, Banwaletu is going to become the growth center for Fiji. Not only in terms of tourism, in terms of resource-based sectors, and we see increased production, not only rice, sugar, and in many other food sectors. All I want to say in conclusion, friends, ladies and gentlemen, that the road ahead is not going to be easy. And we have set a target. And in the government, we are not thinking about just elections. We're telling ourselves every day that leadership, political leadership is temporary. Whether it's 4 years, 8 years, it's still temporary. And our job as a government is to make sure that we set the foundation, vision, plan that we can all work towards. And for the first time, we set a target. We're saying, let's become a rich, high-income country by 2050. That's doable, that's possible, that's out there for us to take it on. But it is not going to happen if we continue with business as usual. And I want to invite you, on behalf of the government, on behalf of the Prime Minister, to work with us, yes, we would be the first one to admit that we can't get everything right all the time. There are side steps, there are mistakes, there are gaps, but as I said, we've been in government as of today, 2 years, 5 months, and that's not a long time to do everything that we set out to do. This is another historical thing that I want to say in my talk with them. This is the first time in the history of PG after independence that a government that has changed an election from one group to another has lasted for more than a year. And that is historical. That is historical. That gives us hope. And that's where we want to take this country. So thank you once again, friends, ladies and gentlemen, for the invitation. And I look forward to hearing all of you and my esteemed colleagues. And I can assure you that next budget will continue the path that we set out the last 2 budgets and more to address not only just cost of living issues, but to provide an environment that will see sustained growth in the economy. Because if we do not grow, if we do not grow the economy, if we do not collect enough revenue, if we do not spend enough, we cannot take this country forward and make it a rich income country. Thank you once again.